I really believe now that the opposition to two-tier Keir Starmer's crooked and corrupt anti-English government isn't going to come from the usual suspects. The UK is awaiting a revolutionary, our Trump figure to save us from the globalists, the woke mob, and the establishment blob. And so far, at least, there are only two contenders, in my view, to take that role. So it's no surprise the elite class is doing everything they possibly can to shut them both down. Jeremy Clarkson emerged as an early critic of the government. But look, he was prepared to give them a chance. Listen to this interview.
And these are trees that the Mayor of London wanted to pull down.
Just fine. What's your message to the new government? Do you think they get the kind of rural economy at all?
No, I don't think any of them have set foot outside Kentish Town for the last 35 years. No, they're a hopeless bunch.
So would you invite Keir to your pub, Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister?
No, he's banned. He's the first person to be banned. He's actually on a board in the hall. He's banned.
Why? What have you got against him?
Hello? I thought you were running a news operation. He hasn't done much to endear himself to me yet. Well, we'll have a look at farming. It all might turn around, you never know.
But it didn't turn around. We know that. The budget changed everything. Clarkson wrote, "Farmers, I know that you have been shafted today, but please don't despair. Just look after yourselves for 5 short years and this shower will be gone." But in the past fortnight, an intriguing new proposition has emerged. Clarkson as a political figure, because he's going to be leading next week's protests at Westminster against Labour. And in the Sun column that he writes over the weekend, a line from him saw the entire political establishment take note. It's brilliant. I'm going to read it to you in full. Clarkson wrote in the Sun, "I'm becoming more convinced that Starmer and Reeves have a sinister plan. They want to carpet bomb our farmland with new towns for immigrants and net zero wind farms. But before they can do that, they have to ethnically cleanse the countryside of farmers." Now you can imagine the reaction to that. Connor Tomlinson, good friend of ours, posted on X, "Caesar has appeared." And then James Canagasorium added this more detailed analysis, writing, "Genuinely think that if Jeremy Clarkson entered politics now, it could be a moment, Britain's Trump moment, but far more English and less authoritarian. He has reach, a massive TV show, part of the nation's mental furniture. He has become the countryside's most effective representative in decades. He's far more heterodox than his opponents suggest. Winds up all the right people, everyone hollering at me with political mechanics." And you only have to watch Clarkson's takedown of failed London Mayor Sadiq Khan's awful cycle lanes in London to just imagine Clarkson very quickly becoming the country's most popular politician.
And these are trees that the Mayor of London wanted to pull down to make way for a cycle lane. Well, he can fuck off. I mean, the man's obviously deranged. You can't pull trees down so that people can cycle. I mean, I know that cycle lanes now are seen as the single most important thing in the world by all those lunatics with 5 hardened bananas on their head and a little GoPro, but they can fuck off, they're not. I was just coming just now into London on the A40, where they've taken one of the lanes away to make a cycle lane, massive traffic jam resulting from it, and stuck in it is an ambulance. Someone is dying of a heart attack somewhere up in Acton. Ambulance can't get there because they're building a cycle lane. We live in absurd times.
Yes, we do. But for the moment, the man the establishment fears most remains Nigel Farage, an actual politician with actual declared ambitions to become Prime Minister. And why else would he have been blocked? Outrageously blocked, by the way, from laying a wreath at the Cenotaph yesterday. As Reform's Deputy Leader Richard Tice posted on X, Remembrance Day at Cenotaph. Why were Reform UK not allowed to lay a wreath? We got more votes than SNP, Lib Dems and DUP combined, yet they all laid wreaths. Shameful stitch up. Farage blamed the establishment, and I think he's right. He told GB News that Reform UK was told that it could not lay a wreath as the party only has 5 MPs below the threshold of 6. How convenient. Needed to qualify for laying a wreath. Meanwhile, the government completely rejected Nigel's offer, his offer for the good of Britain, by the way, to act as an unofficial envoy between the UK and the new Trump administration, an idea that has been endorsed by former Tory Home Secretary Suella Braverman.
That they ought to be making use of Nigel Farage in terms of talking to the new US government?
Listen, I think in the national interest, absolutely. Listen, Nigel Farage has got a good relationship with Donald Trump. He's been part of the campaign. He's been a supporter. Donald Trump obviously rates him. Again, you know, if Keir Starmer were a bigger man, I think he would put aside petty differences and actually try and harness the value that Nigel Farage adds to the national interest. Who wouldn't?
Do you think he'd be a good ambassador to the US for us?
Listen, these questions aren't really for me, but again, I mean, it's very much for the Prime Minister to decide who makes up his diplomatic corps.
But do you think he'd do a good job?
I think he would. I think Nigel Farage is a good ambassador for the UK. I think there's obviously a meeting of minds with the Republican administration, and at the end of the day, the national interest is what must come first. We want a UK-US trade deal.
Makes perfect sense, right? And you remember Keir Starmer, at the start of his premiership, said he was always going to put country before party. But now I want to show you Keir Starmer's stooge, the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, literally scoff and laugh at the idea of engaging Nigel Farage. Watch this and get angry.
Look, it's not for me to advise Mr. Farage about his career options.
No, I'm not asking you to advise him. I'm asking you whether you take advantage of his offer.
I think that's
free.
I think that's probably unlikely. My advice to Mr. Farage would be he might want to concentrate his efforts on the constituents in Clacton that elected him into office, as opposed to spending his time in the United States of America.
Well, you know, okay, I'm laughing about it, but there is a serious point here. Your leader has said time and time again, I remember it from his conference speech, we will always put country before party. Mm-hmm. Man comes along, it might be a different party, and he says, I can help you. And it's manifest he can help you. He is close to Trump. Trump listens to him because Trump tells the world that he listens to Nigel Farage. Why would you snub the offer of help? That's a help for the country, unless you're putting now your party's interests and dislike of Mr. Farage before the country's interests.
Well, I'm sure Mr. Farage will be pleased you're making the case for him. I mean, look, the counterfactual here is that we do not have influence and we do not have relationships. That's just not true. Karen Pierce, our ambassador in the United States, the team, the foreign secretary, people that work in government here in Westminster have got relationships with President-elect Trump, Vice President-elect.
Yeah, but none of them gets invited to Mar-a-Lago. None of them gets photographed in Trump Tower. Why don't you use this man who's offering you help?
As I say, I think he should focus on working with his constituents in Clacton, who deserve a bit of a full-time MP as opposed to transatlantic commentator.
And have you noticed that's the line? That's the establishment line. That's what they've agreed to say about Farage. Oh, little Farage, you just stay in Clacton. And sure enough, that was the line of questioning that Sly News put to Nigel this week. And although his response shut them up.
About your life as an MP, because there have been some who've accused you of not spending enough time in Clacton. Do you think that's a fair accusation?
No.
How many times have you been to Clacton?
I've just exchanged contracts on a house there. I'll be living there. Is that good enough? How much time is Keir Starmer spending in his constituency? How much time is Ed Davey spending?
You're not Prime Minister, to be fair.
How much time is Ed Davey spending in his constituency? I am representing Clarkson, yes, but I'm also leading a national political party.
You missed votes on the budget. you've
I
been
did.
in the US. I mean, it feels like you don't really like these questions.
No, I'm just telling you. I've bought a house in Clarkson. What more do you want me to do? What more? I mean, what more can I do?
What about surgeries? What's happening with those? Are you going to be doing
Done loads of them, lots of them. Online consultations, telephone calls, lots of them.
Do you think being an MP is a good job? Do you think
It was an honour.
is it a challenge balancing everything?
I had the same problem as an MEP. You know, I was an MEP for over 20 years, but for over half of that, I led a national political party. Doing both is hard. There's no question about that. Of course it is.
But look, politicians can try to ignore Farage and Clarkson all they like for now, but I don't believe that position will hold. And actually, 2 posts sum that up for me this week, and I wanted to share them both with you, both from good men. First, Reform UK's Howard Cox, who shared the feelings of millions on Remembrance Sunday when he wrote, "Today, I attended a local Remembrance Day event, then watched back the National Cenotaph event. I felt physically sick seeing Keir Starmer, David Lammy, Yvette Cooper and Sadiq Khan at the ceremony, 4 people who hate the UK and claiming to care for those who died for our freedom." And then perhaps more importantly from Nick Dixon, who said, "Starmer can never recover from how he handled Southport. Nothing else he does will ever matter." And I think he's completely right. Slippery Starmer destroyed what limited trust he had with us, his people, within weeks of entering number 10. He will be punished for it. But so will the Westminster system that lied to get him into Downing Street, and that is why they are plotting so hard to try and stop Jeremy Clarkson and Nigel Farage. Now, the Uncancelled Interview. And I am so excited today to be joined by my friend, but also one of the country's most interesting former politicians turned broadcasters. She is now an independent Substack star, having launched That's What She Said. Alex Phillips, so great to have you here, and I know there's a lot we're going to discuss over the next 90 minutes or so. But can I ask you first, Alex, because I know you are incredibly close to Nigel. You were one of his Brexit Party MEPs, but in fact, your relationship professionally dated back to the UKIP days. So do you believe that there is a chance he could be Britain's Trump, that he could be Prime Minister by 2029?
Of course there is. Look, you have to look at the direction of travel. You've had populism sweep its way across the continent of Europe. It's only in countries where they've been able to game the system and create these sort of unified opposition coalitions, they've prevented populist parties from taking the reins. You've now got Trump in the White House in America. I mean, wake up and smell the coffee. You can see which way voters in the West are going. They don't want globalism. They don't like the woke stuff. They don't like the snooty, sneering leftists. I mean, looking at that interview earlier with the Labour Party man sort of laughing and chuckling, oh, he should just stay in Clacton, shouldn't he? It's like, are they so disconnected that they would rather chop off their nose or the nose of the country to spite their face? You know, Nigel Farage has a very good relationship with Donald Trump. He's going to be having conversations with Trump anyway. What he was saying is, we're going to be having sidebars. We phone each other. We communicate. He listens to me. Let me bring this inside the tent. Let me do that with you involved, so there's no clashes going on here. So we're all working in lockstep, and yet they can't help themselves. And the ridiculous questions about how many days a week are you and your constituents? I've heard them ask that of anybody else. It's pathetic. So, you know, do I think he's going to end up in number 10? I think there's a very real prospect, because when we come around to the next election, guess what? The Labour Party will have been the incumbents. They're already hated. You look at their polling figures, the approval ratings, it has absolutely collapsed. They're despised. Is the Conservative Party going to be able to become more reformed than reform? Because that is what the public's crying out for, that kind of right-wingery, if you will. No, I mean, I don't think they will. They're still a divided party. You've still got people in the Conservative Party saying, oh, well, if Kemi Badenoch tries to do this, if she tries to do that, she's going to have us to face. And I think Reform are going to be able to target all of those second places they got in the last election, about 98 second places where they were just behind Labour, and actually game the first past the post system to get a massive foothold. I think there's going to be a revolution at the next general election.
Yes, revolution is the word. But what was interesting, Alex, I was reading, I think your latest Substack over the weekend, and you made the point that actually, despite what the media commentary might be, this isn't some sort of lurch to the right. It is in fact simply a return to the centre ground. But the centre ground has been redefined for people like you and people like me to be described as far right, which is ludicrous.
I know, it's just pathetic, isn't it? And they don't understand that this is being rejected, or they don't get why it's being rejected, because they don't know what people are. They don't leave their metropolitan bubbles. They live in an echo chamber of, it goes like this. I think it was Lionel Shriver who coined the term or used the term luxury ideologies. Back in the day, if you wanted to keep up with the Joneses, you got the latest Balenciaga handbag, you got a particular car, you got a type of phone that no one else could have. You went and got a suntan, a la Coco Chanel, to prove that you could afford to fly abroad. Well, even though the wealth gap has grown, people having access to a more luxury lifestyle or being able to present that externally has been hugely uplifted. And so now the only way that they've got to keep up with the Joneses, to show their elitism, to sort of shower themselves in the purifying light of superiority, is with this faux moral rectitude. And it's the perfect thing to use, because they don't live at the sharp end of mass inward migration. They don't live at the sharp end of some of these woke ideologies that essentially are tearing families apart, eradicating our history, our heritage, our culture. They're incubated from this. I always say the problem is with the metropolitan elites is because they live such a sheltered existence, they have a totally hindered view. When you've got no roof over your head, guess what? You're exposed to the elements. And that's what's going on here.
But first, I love the holidays. It's my favourite time of year in so many ways. But I find it can be very demanding. Going to all of the events, dinners, looking for gifts, planning the day itself. Every year, I'm not going to lie, I tend to burn out quicker than the last. And let's be honest, it's probably because I'm getting older. I'm in my 40s now. But this year, I don't plan to burn out at all. Getting older is inevitable, but feeling older isn't. As we get older, our body's ability to create energy declines, but recent scientific discoveries have found we can actually increase our energy levels in our cells by taking something called NMN. NMN has been shown to increase energy and endurance, activate our body's ability to burn fat, enhance mental function and health, improve blood pressure, regulate blood sugar levels, and support many other health markers. Finding high-quality pure NMN is hard, so I use Verso. They conduct third-party testing for each batch produced to guarantee you get what you paid for. It contains the highest quality NMN and other research-backed ingredients that have been shown to increase energy levels and slow down aging. After taking Cellbean for some time, I feel like a younger version of myself. I've noticed more energy, enhanced endurance, improved cognition, fat loss, better sleep, and if I do get a cold, I recover faster, which is very good at the moment given everything going around. So click the link in the description on YouTube and Rumble, or head on over to buy.ver.so. If you use the coupon code Outspoken at checkout, you will save 15% on your first order. So let me just repeat the address: www.buy.ver.so/outspoken. Use the coupon code Outspoken. Indeed. Now, can I ask you, Alex, about Jeremy Clarkson? Because at this point, let's just be clear, he is not a declared politician, but he is certainly now I would argue, one of the most effective critics of this Labour government. He's going to be leading the farmers' protest next week to Westminster. And his rhetoric, which I completely agree with, by the way, has ramped up a gear with him saying very, very clearly that he believes that this Labour government is trying to ethnically cleanse the countryside. Could it be Jeremy Clarkson, who is Britain's Trump?
Well, I don't think he's going to get engaged in politics. And what's ironic is most people think he probably voted Brexit and he didn't. And what I was saying before about people with a sheltered existence have a hindered view, ever since he actually got out of London and got out of the cosy Cotswold village where he weekended and actually started roughing and tumbling it with the likes of Gerald and Caleb, has he suddenly gone, wow, there's a lot wrong with the establishment and the way they do things. Wow, governments have been treating farmers abysmally for decades. One assumes if he had engaged with that side of the population much sooner, he would have voted Brexit as well. But I think he's an important voice. I mean, Clarkson's Farm is an absolute phenomenon, and it's wonderful. Not only is it a brilliantly engaging, entertaining, informative piece of television, haven't we all just suddenly realized what farming's about? This amazing industry that puts food on our shelves, that keep us alive. Until I watched that, you don't really understand how much hard work this is. How crazy the margins are, that people have to get up at 5 a.m. and do you know what? If it's going to rain next week, you better work 48 hours in a row or your whole crop could be destroyed. You know, we suddenly became alive to the toil and the tribulations that are faced in rural communities and went, gosh, we've got respect for these people. I just wish more professions now had shows on things like Amazon Prime and Netflix. You know, how about we look at what the long distance lorry driver has to go through? Doctors are constantly venerated, the police, all these sort of blue light industries. But how about we actually look at some of the other backbone of Britain?
Totally.
What the average man and woman gets up to keep this country running. Politicians have no idea.
Now, Alex, you remain very close to Nigel. He appeared on your Cider House Rules on your Substack, which is one of your new features. And people are going to ask the question, obviously, would you consider throwing your hat back in, becoming part of Reform UK, especially if there's a chance that he could actually be leading the government at the next election?
Dan, it's not would I will, it's about when. You know as well as I do that the sort of knots that people will tie us in is people who might be politically engaged and also try and have a job in broadcasting. And it's okay for Ed Balls to present and interview his own wife, but I have an Ofcom against me for having been elected for 6 months, 5 years ago, to a parliament we're not even in anymore. I had to sit out the general election because Ofcom said, well, you know, she's a politician. Am I heck? I mean, come on, that's ridiculous. Do people know my party affiliations? Well, yes, I was in the Brexit Party and connected to Reform. But I've had to sort of sit out politics because I had to make a choice between earning a living and engaging in what I want to do. And this is how they try and get you. This is how they try and squeeze you. This is how they try to minimize you. This is how, it's almost like lawfare, you know, this is how they try and silence the voices they want to be silenced. But they're not going to win. I will return to politics. I'll bloody well stand in the next election if I don't stand sooner. And you know what? Get past to number 10 myself at this stage. I'm only 40 years old, so watch this space.
Come on, that's what we need. That's what we need. And Alex, aren't you inspired watching what happened with Trump in the US? Because actually, all of the influence now has moved to the independent media. There aren't those same gatekeepers. And actually, the mainstream media, sure, they can try and maintain all of these traditions. But in fact, when you look at what happened with Musk and Rogan and Trump, that is a sign about what's going to happen over the next 5 years. The off-communists can try to regulate the internet as much as they like, but eventually they are going to lose. And I think what we're now doing in the independent media is going to be as much a part of the revolution as what happened in the States.
You know what? If you give people a reason to fight, they're going to fight. You know, it's a bit like Labi Sifa said, the higher you build my barriers, they've lost. It's gone. It's done. You know, we've reached peak woke. We've reached peak globalization. What's going to be amazing is to see how Trump actually deals with the supranational institutions. I've heard he's going to make an appointee as his representative to the UN, the sort of person who people are going to choke on the cornflakes and think, oh my. He's not going to, he's not going to tolerate any of this stuff anymore. When you remember last time round, as American president, he didn't have control of the Senate and the Congress and the Supreme Court. He's got the hat trick now. Just you try and stop him. He's going to be able to be assertive in a way that people did not get to see last time. And he means business. You know, after everything that's happened to him, he is coming back swinging. And thank goodness, I just bought 3 MAGA hats online, one for me, one for my boyfriend, one for my mum. I want to wear it year round. I mean, this really is the moment now. This is the turning point. It's happened. It's happened, and good, can I just say, because it's caused so much damage while all of this has gone on, the open borders, the destruction of our heritage, the destruction of our values, the mocking of our native religion. Even if we're not filling up church pews, guess what? We still identify
as Christian.
You know, what they have done is going to be really hard to reverse, but I think finally we're stopping it in its tracks.
Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.